Right.
So
So much of I think producing and I guess maturing in producing is like getting those visions of what those things are supposed to sound like in your brain, so that when you're approaching a song, you're like, okay, how do I get to that thing that I now have in my brain as a reference? And it's just about then it's about using the technicalities to kind of get there, you know?
yeah,
It's like,
and
okay, the snare is good, but it's too it doesn't have it's like it's too beefy or it's too honky or it doesn't have enough bite, you know? Like, and then you're just like, okay, how do I get it to where I want it, you know?
yeah. And then at some point, it's also about just throwing it all away and being like,
Right.
hey, like, what sounds good to me? You
Yeah.
know?
Well, I mean, I think what I from what I heard of the songs of your records, right, like the Ava King records, like they sound totally badass and they have totally unique sound. So that seems like it's a lot of it, you know.
I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, I mentioned the low end before we started recording. Like, let's talk a little bit about your sound. Yeah, I mean, like you're just I don't know the low end and the stuff that I listen to sounds amazing. What's your I guess approach to 808s, low end in general, bass?
Oh my God. Man, I don't really have an approach, to be honest with you. I produce, it's going to sound so bad. I produce most of my music in these little headphones, like in the Bose headphones.
Mm-hmm.
I got them a while ago when I still had my China host money coming in, and they're just like headphones on cords, and I produce music. And I think what it makes it's like I think it has a curve that goes down, so you just don't really feel the low end. So you're like, oh, to get that low end, like I really need to crank it up.
Right, it's the opposite of the Beats headphones, right?
Oh my God. Yes. I was in session last week, and the artist I was in session with, she was like, oh, I don't have an extra like set of like studio monitors. Do you just want to use these Beats? And I put them on and I'm like, oh my God, all I can hear is the bass. Like that's literally like always the only thing I could hear.
I know. And it doesn't even sound good. It just sounds like woofy, you know? It's not like
I'm so confused. So
it's not enjoyable.
Is that a thing? So is that
Yeah.
what is that actually? Because I thought it might have just been that headphone, but no, that's a thing that like everybody. So and everybody likes that.
I think a lot of people like it. Keep going back to Dre again, but yeah, I think people are into it because people like to hear bass. I think that's kind of what's influenced kind of what's the modern sound now, which is just like more bass than is, you know, one would say is flat or natural sounding. Like that Britney Spears record does not have like extended low end. It has like a very kind of smooth, balanced low end. And whereas today, when we're hearing like Billie Eilish or whatever, it's just like absurd amount of low end, which I'm kind of into as a bass player. But like, but when you hear it in the Beats cans, it's just like I don't know. It doesn't work. You know, it's too.
That's interesting. Yeah,
it's too absurd. You know, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, that was way.
I haven't listened to Beats in a few years, so maybe I should listen to another set of headphones before I judge again. But from my experience, my limited experience with Beats, it was like this is not pleasant. You know?
Yeah, I was listening to it and I'm like, okay, I'm using these headphones just because this is just me monitoring you singing. But like, there is no way I could mix in these. Like that would just be crazy. Yeah. Oh, what was I going to say? Yeah, that's so interesting. The Britney Spears record. And I remember like the Backstreet Boys, they actually took out all the low end of their record because that's how they could get it to play louder on radio.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, they had made, I think it was for which record? Like the A&R made an executive decision and said, hey, the way that we're going to get everybody into these songs is we're just going to make these songs louder than whatever else is on the radio. And the way to do that is like, they were like, the radio isn't playing low end anyway. So we're just going to cut the low end from all of the records. I mean, that's what I heard. So yeah, it's
every
different.
mixing engineer on this podcast is groaning. You know, nobody wants to get rid of. I mean, I love low end.
Yeah, but I don't know. But then again, that was like so effective, and like those songs are also what I grew up on.
Right, it's true. Yeah, those records were everywhere. But I guess if I listen back to those records, I do feel like it's missing low end. I mean, so listen, it had an impact, obviously, but it's. I don't go listening to that as from like an audiophile perspective, thinking like, oh, listen to the low end, you know, like.
Got you. Yeah.
Be like, okay, cool. Like it's. I mean, maybe it sounds more balanced, but. Anyways, these are just fads, right? Like maybe like in the 80s, there was no low end because everybody was on cocaine and they just cranked the top end because they couldn't hear it. So.
Oh, was that true?
Yeah, it's like the 80s are so thin. Like those mixes are like the thinnest.
Actually, there was a friend of mine in China, and there was a book. I don't know if the book was like, I don't think it was a Chinese book, but he was reading a book about drugs and music and about like whatever drug was prevalent at the time kind of impacted like the music of the time. And I just thought that was super interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Like I know like acid and marijuana had a massive impact on the Beatles and like the late 60s and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And cocaine on the 80s for sure.
Yeah.
And beyond that, I guess a bit too much of a of a drug Luddite. So
yeah, got you. Yeah. Oh, there's always, I mean, I'm not in those sessions where I see it, but I have been in sessions where like literally, cause I'm like pretty sober. Like I don't even really drink that much. But there's definitely been in sessions where like, okay, I'm engineering and then I turn around and literally everybody in the session is asleep behind me. Like they're all just like high and passed out. So it's like, yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting part
LA.
Of the job too. Yeah. And then people are like, yeah, but there's this new one going around and I had to try it last week. And I'm just like, oh man. Yeah. Anyway.
I hear it, but I so can't relate to that. As like I'm like at a point in my life where, you know, I'm a dad. So like if I'm going to do something like that, it has to be in like a constraint that I'm like safe and I'm not going to affect anybody else around me. You know what I mean? And I don't feel that way with like drugs. With alcohol, I can have a beer or I can have like one shot and I know what it's going to do to me. And like, that's cool. But if it's like
a pill, you're like, I don't know what's in here. Yeah.
I've never done any pills, but like with weed or whatever, it's like, it's just like, I've had such varying experiences that I just don't even know. And I haven't done it enough times that like, I know how my body's going to react. So it's like, I gotta err on the side of caution. And I don't have room for that in my life, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't really, I don't know. I don't know. I have my own thoughts about like drug and addiction experiences. It doesn't, right. I don't think it's, I think there are experiences that you could have on drugs that you could also just get to if you just did a lot of meditation and took care of yourself, you know? Like, I think like a lot of drugs, it's like, and it's also this society and hustle culture, right? Like I remember when I was really into that hustle culture and at the end of the day, I was like, wow, I really need a glass of wine. You know, and like when you really need a glass of wine, you know, that's when you know like, oh, like I'm trying to like put a Band-Aid on this. Like I'm not taking care of myself. You know, I'm overwhelming myself, which I still do. Right. But now I'm just stricter about it where I'm like, okay, if I feel like I need something, I'm just like, okay, what is it in my life that I'm not doing right now?
Right. Modern society is bad for us, and we're just taking different kinds of medicines to deal with it.
Oh my God, it's just so bad on just so many levels. And it's just so encouraged in social media. It's so encouraged in music videos. It's just, I could go on and on.
So interesting. Yeah. Wait, so back to the Bose headphones. So the Bose headphones are lacking bass, but you're kind of able to like compensate or something and get
I don't know why, like, but it's so funny, like you'll say, hey, I like the way you treat your bass, right? But I was on the phone with somebody last week because I'm kind of with another partner of mine. We're kind of trying to get more into trailer music, right? And so we had this person who's had a lot of trailer music experience, and he said your bass is like too contained. Like you're not doing a good job with your bass, and you're not doing a good job with the way you're mixing your vocals. Yeah, and so I'm like, okay, that's good feedback to know too. So yeah, no, I mean, my approach to bass is honestly like I really should. I'm, you know, like where I think what I like to do as a producer is I just like to use the computer, create a beat, create like arrangements. Like I'm more of an arranger than a mixer. Like I like the arrangement side of things, you know? And so I don't know if I can really speak to mixing a lot on the technical side. I can just say like, oh, I'll just put, you know, when I'm creating a track, I'll just put a reference track in my session. And then I'll just kind of listen to that reference track and be like, okay, does this, you know, I'll also be, I mean, with Rob, we had an experience where he was like, okay, now we're going to go to like a studio where you're going to be able to hear everything, right? Because I have my own room, right? But it's not the same as you're in a music studio. And it's not even the same as like you're in like a random music studio. It's like, this is a music studio where like the back wall, it's like literally like he said like the size of the back wall has to be like 4 feet in width or something. Like there's a way that you can really hear accurately the low end of a track, but it only works in very specific studios that have exactly the right sonic structure in the walls, basically. And like that was such an incredible experience. I was like, oh my God, I can hear everything in this. And then you create such a different bass. Like like for me, like, yeah, I mean, it's obvious, right? Your listening environment is everything. My listening environment is my Bose headphones. You know?
Yeah. I mean, I see the KRKs in the background, but I'm guessing you're not using them as much as the headphones.
Honestly, not. It's like so weird. Like not really. And I have the Bose headphones, so they're the ones with the cord, right? And they're noise canceling, but I just never use the noise canceling part. I'm just so
that's probably good.
Yeah, like I just never, and that's just, yeah. And I don't know. And then for like the low end, I'll do a lot of side chaining in Ableton. You can get that thing in Ableton where I don't know which DAW do you use?
I'm a Logic user, but yeah.
Yeah, in Ableton you get that thing where you can side chain the compressor and you tell the compressor that it looks like 10 milliseconds ahead. So like the side chaining with the kick is like super precise. And I'll just like, or I'll use like Shaperbox. Shaperbox is this like this volume suppressor, like this rhythmic volume suppressor.
Right. There's also Kickstarter, I think, is another one. Yeah. Or Kickstart.
Yeah. So I'll just use that. I just like, but Rob is old school, so he doesn't use that. But like I use the side, like I just like make room for my kick. I don't know if anything is, you know.
It's funny. It's like I like side chaining a kick in like a more like modern kind of production, like an EDM or like a hip hop kind of thing. But in rock, there's something about the way like the kick and the bass hit together when the bass is not side chained. Like if you get that right carving, like if like the kick is at 60 and the bass is more in the 80 to 100 like range, and they like mesh together nicely. It doesn't sound as good when it's sidechained because it just sounds like the bass is weak. But like if it's overlapping in the right amount, like in the right spot, like I feel like it just has a better impact for that kind of a genre. You know what I mean?
That's cool.
But for like the stuff that you're doing, which is more, I would say more like hip hop, like then you need that. You know that sidechain is what makes that sound. It's the sound of the genre. You know what I mean? The sound of a rock record is not that sound. You know what I mean? It's sound of the kick and the bass at the same time.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that with me. Yeah.
That's what I think. I don't know. I mean, I'm not the expert here, but like the be all end all expert. You know, I have some knowledge.
I don't think there is any expert. Like everybody is just finding out what works for them. But yeah, that is something I'll notice in my sessions.
Literally today, I was like, let me see if I could use a side chain. Maybe it'll make the bass like hit better with the kick. And I was like, it's the wrong sound now. It's not the right sound for this thing I'm working on.
Yeah, but you get to try. Like I think that's
you get to try it out.
That's music for me. It's like, and that's I think that's the part I'm kind of slowly coming to terms with who I am as a musician. And I think I really enjoy being a student of music. Like
you mentioned that also earlier before, when we were like, sorry, you mentioned that earlier, like in this interview, how you're a student. I feel like that's such a great, it's such a great attitude, you know, and like, it's a topic that comes up a lot actually, is like being continued learning and like continued growth and being in that journey and that kind of upward trajectory slowly but surely, like.
Yeah. And also just going back to that basic, like for me, I think just like my expectations going into this industry were so low. Like I was just like, you know what? If I just get to live in LA and I just get to learn about music for the rest of my life and that's all I do. And then I have, my own little job or like whatever I need to do to pay the bills, like, hey, like A-okay, And then, and then as you get into things and you start getting placements and you start earning some money, then you're like, okay, the next thing, right? But And then you're like, oh, this isn't enough. Like I could do this. I could do, what I could get that if I got that. Or like, but then it's just really reminding myself